Yes, thank you. No, thank you very much, honorable members, president, ministers, and guests. You are all welcomed to this sitting. We welcome the first citizen of the Republic, His Excellency President Matamela Ramaphosa, our Minister of Kokta, Mr. Velinkosini Hlabisa, the Deputy Chairperson of the National House, Nkosi Mavuso, as well Dumile. Kumkan Sikau of Amaxhosa Avulikai. Queen Masalana Mujaji of Balobedu, Kolobe. Acting Queen Manya Kutulari of Bapedi Kingship, Hlapuhadia Patla. Morene Moholo Montwedi Mota of Batlokwa, Bahamotwa, Dikhomo Morena. Morene Moholo Mupedi of Bakwena Ba Mupedi, Dikhomo Morena. Ministers, deputy ministers, our own deputy minister Bansi Ngamashe, and Deputy Minister Masemola of Kokta, members of the National House of Traditional and Khoisan leaders and their spouses, the chairpersons and deputy chairpersons of our provincial houses, President of Contralesa, Khosi Mokoena, President of Rolesa, Inkosi Mabena, former chairpersons of the National House who are here, Khosi Shuping and Khosi Maubani, traditional leaders of the Republic of South Africa, representatives of Amandebele and Amakhachabe Kingships, chairperson of Lesotho College of Chiefs, Morena Mohale, chairperson of the Zambia House of Chiefs, Dr. Chief Chisunga, chairperson of the Public Service Commission, Professor Madoda Fikeni, deputy chairperson of the CRL Rights Commission, Prince Mahlangu, Mr. Bing Kaileng of Sanak Main Sector, representative of the Municipal Demarcation Board, Mr. Pillay, the following partners of the National House of Traditional and Khoisan Leaders, Mr. Vera of Musiamis Rural Development, Mr. Abed Karim of Ali Imdad Foundation, Dr. Bukhopani Zulu of Bukhopani Zulu Foundation, Dr. Mtembu of Indoni, South Africa, Mr. Oak of Penot Ricard, Mr. Manenze of National Heritage Council, Ms. Nkuta Saneli Siwe of Old Mutual, Mr. Fakat of Ikamva Institute Development, Mr. Nelson Mufu of UN Resident Coordinator, Advocate Naidu of the Freedom Park Trust, Ms. Nomkebo Dlamini, Deputy Chairperson of the Central Drug Authority, and the Secretariat supporting the Chairperson of the Southern African Network of Traditional Leaders in Drug Demand Reduction, Mr. Mandla Linda, our retired Communication Manager, and his spouse, Director Generals, all government officials, ladies and gentlemen. I am now going to call the President of the Republic of South Africa, His Excellency Mr. Cyril Ramaphosa, to render his opening address. Please welcome the President to the stage.
Chairperson of the National House of Traditional and Khoisan Leaders of our country, Khosi Siahlulo Rapulana. Deputy Chairperson of the National House of Traditional and Khoisan Leaders of our country, Nkosi Langa Mavuso, Azweli Dumile. Your Majesties, our kings and queens who are here present, I'd like to take the opportunity to welcome His Majesty King Ahlangene Sigcawu of Ramaphosa in the Eastern Cape, Vulikai. I'd like to welcome Her Majesty Queen Masalanabo Mujaji, the 7th Balobedu Queen in Limpopo, Mulozwi Mushade. Her Majesty Queen Tulare of Bapedi Kingdom in Limpopo, Tlabukhadi Aphala. His Majesty Montweli Mota of Batlokwa Bamota in the Free State, Bikhomu Murena. His Majesty Moreno Moholo Mupedi Wabakwena Bamupedi in the Free State, Bikhomu Murena. The Chairperson of the National House of Provinces, who are here present. I didn't get to see her, but we also greet her. The National Speaker of our Assembly, Ms. Tokoti Diza, Minister of Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs, Minister Zwelinkosini Tlhabisa, ministers and deputy ministers who are also here present, our premiers, chairpersons and deputy chairpersons of provincial houses of traditional and Khoisan leaders, the president and deputy president of Contralesa and Rolesa, and the chairperson of the National Khoisan Council, as well as members of the Commission on Khoisan Matters, leaders of political parties who are also here present, and representatives of our Chapter 9 institutions, directors general, and other officials, as well as advisors, distinguished guests, and ladies and gentlemen. It is indeed an honor and a privilege to be here today to address the very first opening of the National House of Traditional Leaders and Khoisan Leaders under the Government of National Unity, which we inaugurated last year. As traditional leaders, izingonyama zethu, you owe your position to your bloodline, and it is your birthright. You are representatives of your forebears, and you are the natural leaders of our people. History has assigned you your positions as well as your responsibilities. You are vital to the very progress of our country in more ways than one, also with regard to development of its people. Traditional leaders support the administration of many of our rural and peri-urban communities. You are the pulse of our nation. The communities you represent have borne the brunt of poverty, inequality, and underdevelopment for many, many centuries. They are increasingly bearing the brunt of the devastating impacts also of climate change, damage to farmland, and the destruction of property and infrastructure. Our thoughts and prayers are with all who are affected in those communities. These are the people that you lead. I want to use this opportunity to call on you as the natural leaders of our people to work with the disaster management response teams in our provinces and support the work that is being done to protect our rural communities against extreme weather conditions. Yes, in doing so, we know that you will provide the leadership that is needed. One of the ongoing campaigns by the Department of Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs, for example, is to discourage many of our people from building houses in low-lying areas and near major water resources. We often find that when there are floods, those who build on the flood line are those who suffer greatly. And let me take this opportunity to strongly condemn the rise in the killings of traditional leaders, a devastating phenomenon that has been going on in our country for a number of months. This is an affront to our nation. Already this year in Mpumalanga, Contra-Lesser National Executive Member and Chairperson of the Nzunza Fene Traditional Council, Hosi Tugwana, was assassinated at Tweefontein near Kwamhlanga. Even one killing is one too many. And there have been a number of others that have taken place in the past. On behalf of government, I pass our deepest condolences to the families for the loss of their loved ones and to you for the loss of your colleagues. Be assured that our ministers, as well as our law enforcement agencies, are working around the clock to ensure that this phenomenon is brought under control and it stops. I know that the law enforcement agencies are following up on the perpetrators of all these dastardly acts. As representatives of different communities, your voices should not and must not be silenced by criminals with hidden agendas. In the recent State of the Nation address, I made a call for us to speak of the nation that we want. I said that we should speak of the work we must do and the work that we are doing to build that nation. As I did during the State of the Nation address, I reiterate our commitment as government to work with traditional and Khoisan leaders to build this nation. Under your leadership and wisdom, we have worked together to overcome apartheid, a crime against humanity. In the earlier consultation before this meeting, one of our traditional leaders, in fact, the chairperson of the National House of Traditional Leaders and Khoisan leaders, reflected on my visit to Robben Island earlier this year. And he said, Mr. President, you will have observed that some of those early prisoners who were held at Robben Island were our traditional leaders. And that is testimony to the role that your forebears played in the struggle against apartheid. They were persecuted, they were imprisoned, and they were even killed. Together, however, we brought peace and democracy to our country. As we prepare for the national dialogue, which we as government have committed ourselves to hold, a dialogue in which South Africans are called upon to chart a new path for our country. We will rely on your guidance to rally our people towards a future of a shared prosperity and inclusivity. We seek a national dialogue that involves all sections of society, as well as all formations and all citizens in our country. This dialogue must be a space where the voices of all are heard and where they can come together to forge a shared vision and a common program of action. This conversation must involve people living in rural areas. It must reach every corner of the country, every town, every village, every farm, and every homestead. It will be important that traditional leaders and the communities that they lead participate in the national dialogue so that the process of the national dialogue produces a plan that reflects the interests and aspirations of everyone, not just the leaders or the elite. The medium-term development plan that we have adopted as the Government of National Unity intends to advance 3 strategic priorities. Firstly, to drive inclusive growth as well as job creation, a problem that has dogged our country for many, many years. Secondly, one of the key priorities is to reduce poverty and also to handle or reduce the high cost of living in our country. Thirdly, to build a capable, ethical, and developmental state. We seek to be a nation that is at work, a nation driven by hope and a shared belief in our ability to thrive even in the face of adversity. This requires bold leadership, but it also requires collaboration, especially with the institution of traditional and Khoisan leadership. The democratic and traditional governance systems need to work in an integrated manner, a manner that ultimately serves the interests and the needs of our people. To give effect to this commitment, we are undertaking an extensive consultation to review the white paper on local government to outline a modern and fit-for-purpose local government system. The Ministry of Corporate Governance and Traditional Leaders is coordinating this process and is already putting mechanisms in place to ensure that Amakhosi, our traditional leaders, participate in the review. I have mandated Deputy President to facilitate a dialogue with our traditional leaders that will be a valuable platform for engagement in line with the founding purpose of the Interministerial Task Team on Traditional Leadership Matters. The Deputy President has formally communicated with the newly appointed conveners regarding their responsibilities as part of this collective to address matters of concern to the institution of traditional and Khoisan leadership. Following the constitutional court ruling, which declared the Traditional and Khoisan Leadership Act as unconstitutional, concrete steps have been taken to ensure that a bill can be reintroduced in Parliament. The institution of traditional and Khoisan leadership is therefore urged to participate in the consultation process that has ensued. The finalization of this piece of legislation does have particular significance for Khoisan communities because for the first time in history, it makes provision for the recognition of Khoisan leaders and communities. As we affirm the role of traditional leadership, we need to restore the standing, the integrity, the dignity of our traditional cultural practices. The deaths and injuries that result from customary initiation practices, especially in the Eastern Cape, remain a matter of serious concern to all of us. The Minister of Kokta has convened a series of very focused engagements with our kings and selected Chapter 9 institutions, senior traditional leaders, headmen, and others, and also the Eastern Cape provincial government. And these engagements should mobilize all the relevant stakeholders to work together to end initiation deaths. It is simply not acceptable and should not be acceptable to all of us that young men in the prime of their life who are sent for initiation do not come back to play their important role in the communities that they live in. Or they come back with serious injuries that make them not lead a full life. Government has gazetted Customary Initiation Act regulations for public comment. I have been advised that work towards the development of draft regulations on the fees charged in customary initiation schools is also at an advanced stage. When Minister Thabisa came to report to me about the extent of this problem, I could read on his face his deep concern and how moved he was about what is happening with the initiation process. This has to be addressed. We cannot, as a nation, countenance that young men come back in body bags from initiation processes. This is an important development, the process of redrafting the regulations. If we are to address the commercialization and abuse of customary initiation, because it's quite clear to us that there is abuse of a very important tradition that has been handed down over generations by our forebears. We are also concerned about traditional leadership disputes. We should continue to invest in the development of genealogies and customary laws of succession. I'm pleased to note that the Department of Traditional Affairs has to date helped 16 royal families to develop their customary laws of succession. And we call on Amakhosi to be more involved in the fight against gender-based violence and femicide. We appreciate the programs that the House is implementing to fight the scourge. Amakhosi should not allow anyone to abuse women and children, claiming that this is permissible in our African cultures. We know that such violence is not part of any of our culture. Violence against women and children is not part of the nation that we want to build. Your Majesties, in keeping with our culture of cooperation and the spirit of the Freedom Charter, adopted 70 years ago at the Congress, the Congress of the People, we are committed to the vision of a country in which the land is shared among those who work it. The passage into law of the Expropriation Act is part of our determination that the land issue be addressed in our lifetime. We're taking a number of measures and steps to ensure that this dream that our forebears had is realized. Government is continuing with the work that we have previously discussed with the House regarding the matter of communal land tenure. The Department of Land Reform and Rural Development has completed its work on the Communal Land Tenure Bill and will now engage in public consultations. This has taken time, but we are now at a point where real proposals are on the table. We are pleased that the Department of Land Reform and Rural Development has announced the next intake of young people in the National Rural Youth Service Course, NASREC. This program is an important part of the work that is underway to tackle youth unemployment and to foster the development of our rural areas. I encourage the House to work with the government and also to encourage young people in traditional communities to take this opportunity up. I have had occasion to meet a number of young people who participate in this very important initiative, and I found them energized, I found them full of hope and acquiring skills, valuable skills that will make them participate in the development of our various communities. We are a nation that is founded on meaningful dialogue and fruitful engagement. I'm pleased that the Forum of South Africa's Majesties has been launched with His Majesty King Makhosonke II elected as the chairperson. We now have a platform to serve as an interface with kings, queens, and principal traditional leaders as a collective. I've been advised that steps have already been taken to similarly create a platform for our queens, and I look forward to its establishment. Government is working hard to support economic growth as well as rural communities, and one of the ways in which we are doing this is through infrastructure development. The Welisizwe Rural Bridges program connects rural communities with each other and with vital facilities and services. 40 bridges have now been completed, and I've been to a few of these bridges as they were being opened. Heritage tourism is an area of economic activity in our rural areas that has great potential and which government is also supporting. We therefore welcome the recognition of the great place of Mqhekezweni as a World Heritage Site. The Department of Sports, Arts and Culture has developed a concept document to guide the stakeholders in the process of identification, documentation, and recognition of great places as heritage sites. It is critical that rural communities benefit more from our government's natural wealth. Having noted the concerns of Amakosi, Marenaruna, about inadequate mining benefits to their communities, we have in our previous engagements encouraged partnerships between the House and the Ministry of Mineral Resources. As part of taking this forward, the House has engaged with the Minister of Mineral and Petroleum Resources, and these engagements were followed by the House being invited and also participating in the recent mining Indaba, which was held here in Cape Town. Let us build on the networks established through the mining Indaba and continue to cement this relationship for the benefit of our traditional communities, which are really the repository of the wealth of our country. This year, the meeting of the G20 group of countries will take place on African soil for the first time. And we call on Amakosi to harness this opportunity to showcase our diverse cultural traditions and natural splendor. One of the most important instruments for growth and development in any country is the national budget. Amakosi would know that the presentation of the budget speech by the Minister of Finance was postponed last week. The decision to postpone the presentation of the budget was to allow more time for discussion on areas in the budget on which there was no agreement. This is the very first time that the Government of National Unity, consisting of 10 different political parties, has produced or sought to produce the national budget. It should be expected that there would be different views and different approaches. Now, we often read about this happening in other countries, where there are differences about finalizing a budget and where budgets are subjected to discussions, and sometimes on an extended basis. And in other countries, differences over the budget even lead to the collapse of government. So we are in the process of seeking to build consensus. We are undertaking further discussions so that we can arrive at a budget that everyone can have confidence in. A budget that promotes inclusive growth, that supports job creation, and that tackles poverty and inequality. In the past, you would all know, the budget was usually presented by one party that was the majority governing party, and it will be passed. This time round, we've got 10 political parties that have to mediate their differences, their different approaches, and arrive at a consensus that will result in a budget. Now, even as we have challenges, we know that through cooperation and partnership, we can build a better South Africa in which all enjoy equal opportunity and can lead lives of dignity. Now, as the Government of National Unity, I once again call on our traditional leaders to join hands with us and to embark on a new, glorious future for South Africa and its people. The challenges that may well dishearten a number of people about finalizing a budget, the challenges that we are addressing of building the consensus around the budget may drive fear in the hearts of many people. But I'd like to say, take heart. We have faced many other challenges, even in our very recent past of the formation of the Government of National Unity. And this is one of them. And we will overcome. So the budget will be presented on the 12th of March, and the Minister of Finance will mount this podium and present a budget to the nation. By then, we will have reached full consensus, and we will then be able to take our country forward. I say this so that those who are concerned, who are fearful, who are terrified of this new development that we've never seen in our country, in the history of our democracy, should take heart. This is a process that we need to go through as a government of national unity. It happens in other countries. And may I also say, we may not have paid attention, but it happens also in our local governments. We've seen it happening in our metros. We've seen it happening in our local government, in our municipalities. What I can say is that we will get over this, as we have always overcome a number of challenges. So I end on a note of giving you hope and confidence about the future trajectory of our country. The budget is important because it determines how we are going to deploy resources to fund our ambitions. The three priorities that we have set out: how we will generate growth, and how we will reduce poverty, and how we will also reduce the cost of living and build a capable state. For us to do so, we need the resources that the budget will speak to. And just to say that as our economy is not growing at a level that we want it to grow, our resources are constrained, and this is what in part leads to the challenge that we now have to address, to craft a budget together. And our Minister of Finance, who in terms of our constitution has to draft and present a budget, has the full capability to do so with the support of his colleagues in cabinet. And so we will be moving forward to do precisely that. And that will also help to fund the developmental initiatives that we have in mind for a number of places where you reside. So with that, National Chairperson of the Traditional House and Khoisan leadership, I would like to thank you for this opportunity and the opportunity to also come and address the opening of your house. Thank you.
Ra leboga motlotlegi Tautona wa Afrika Borwa. We are looking forward, President, to the engagement with the Deputy President Paul Mashatile on the dialogue based on what you have presented to us. We request you to direct the cabinet ministers and deputy ministers to form part of the dialogue, because primarily most of the answers are with them, not necessarily with the deputy president. He will just be convening. So we request you that you direct those cabinet ministers to form part of that meeting on that day, so that we can get our rural areas going. We thank you very much for the delivery of the speech. Honorable members, we request that all who are present here in the chamber to join us for the photo session as per the norm on the stairs of the National Council of Provinces as we adjourn after here. This is how it will work. There will be, the first photo session will be with members of the National House. So the Director General, Mr. Dipofa, will be directing us. Nobody should leave. He will be making sure that we leave accordingly. It will be the State President with members of the House, So that means it's the members of the House who will leave first the room. Everybody else will remain behind. And the second cohort will be the Speaker of the National Assembly.